Hello and welcome to What Is My Podcast About? This is a podcast where on a fortnightly basis we get together and discuss a random topic to see if that might be what our podcast is about. My name as always is Keith Ramsey and I am joined by Peter Akerley. So how's your week been?
It's been going pretty well. A little under the weather last night, or not last night, this morning. But it's nothing too serious. Definitely not the good old COVID. So I'm doing well. How about you, Matt?
That one just felt awkward.
That one did feel awkward. Let's get out ahead of this and fucking address the elephant. Matt is currently well, you know what they say, life happens. For Matt, life is happening too much right now. So he does not have the free time available to him to continue recording the podcast. We both told him that's not a good enough excuse. This is more important than the rest of his life. And he got real serious with us and laid down the law and told us that this is just a fun thing we do together as friends, and if we're gonna try and make it serious, then we can fuck right off. So Matt stood up to us, which was made me proud. But no Matt for the short future, and hopefully he'll forgive us and come back in the future.
Yeah, just standard work stuff. So he'll be back at some point, but for now, the podcast format on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, fortnightly if you will be a bit different until he gets back.
So for today, you're stuck with just me and Keith. I'm sure you're all very disappointed in that. I know Matt was my favorite part of the podcast. In the future, who knows? That might not be stuck with just me and Keith. You'll definitely get Matt back eventually, but we're working things out right now and figuring out what's the best course to go forward with the podcast while Matt's unavailable.
If you want Matt back, there'll be a trial.
Trial by combat.
You'll need to solve the 3 riddles.
And also kill a man.
But that's the price.
And by a man, I mean me or Keith, because we're the ones keeping Matt on the podcast. Jesus, this just went down a fucking rabbit hole. I don't know why I made it so antagonistic.
Yeah, you're the one that keeps making it dark.
Yeah, Matt's just busy with work, and yet I needed to add conflict to the podcast, so I made it sound like we're fighting with Matt currently. It's not what it is. Matt's one of our best friends. We're not fighting with him. He's just busy with work, but I need there to be an enemy in my life for me to have concrete goals. So I've made Matt the enemy, and it's a real shitty thing that I'm doing, and I feel bad about it.
Yeah, for all of you who listen, I know we don't put any photos out, but Matt is the most muscular one of the boys. So he definitely would probably beat both of us in a fight. There's no keeping him down between the two of us.
Not only is he the most muscular, he has a fucking black belt. If he wanted to kill us, he could absolutely kill us. Alright, fuck.
So the Game Awards happened.
Yeah, the Game Awards happened. That was a fun time. A couple upsets, I'd say. Nothing like crazy. It Takes Two won Game of the Year, which I was very happy with. I played through It Takes Two, and it was a very positive experience for me.
Yeah, it was a very good game.
A lot like going through therapy. There's a scene where you, as two parents, destroy your child's favorite stuffed animal in order to make her cry, which is a little fucked up, but
I believe that's just standard parenting from what I understand about it.
Yeah. That's how my parents chose to raise me. Nope, I gotta stop creating false narratives. Nope. My mother was a very loving person, my father was. That's just how life was. Alright, cool, moving on.
So we got a few interesting announcements here, some new things that are coming out. One of which both you and I mentioned was Star Wars Eclipse, which looks odd, but intriguing.
Yeah, it's one of those games where I can tell nothing about what the game is going to be because it looked like it was all just cinematics for the most part in the trailer. In fact, it was entirely cinematics. So for one thing, it looks like it takes place during the High Republic, so it's not the KOTOR years, but it's kind of during Yoda's era before Anakin came along and ruined everything. And it's looking like it's going to be a fun game. We know very little about it, other than it's a game set in the Star Wars universe that presumably follows a Jedi, but not a Jedi that we know. Might not be a Jedi, who knows? I'm just making estimations at this point, but I have high hopes for it. because a lot of Star Wars games as of late, barring a couple, have been very good. Like Fallen Order. Fallen Order was a spectacular game.
Yeah, and this one, as mentioned too, is one of the, I think, one of, if not the first game to like be narrative based within the High Empire period, which is the Clone Wars and all that.
Yep.
At least one that hasn't retreaded on information we already know from what they're saying.
Yeah, it's not going to be a retelling of the Skywalker saga. It's going to be a separate story that presumably predates the Skywalker saga, and involves following some characters we maybe know a little bit less about.
Another interesting one, this is one I was very excited for, was Alan Wake 2 was announced.
Yep. I'll be honest with you. I was less excited about that. Not that I don't think it's going to be a good game. It just wasn't one of the ones that particularly tickled my fancy.
That's fair.
I enjoyed the Alan Wake game. It wasn't the top of my list of games.
Yeah, after Alan Wake and Alan Wake American Nightmare, this is definitely a game I've been waiting for, and Remedy, the company behind it, has even stated they would like to go back to the Alan Wake storyline, but because Alan Wake didn't do too well commercially until after the fact, it sold well later in life, not at the beginning. They didn't know it was something people wanted until they had already moved on to other projects, so it's nice to see that they were able to finally come back to it, because they seem to really like this one, and they've even stated like the first game was more action-based, and this one is planned to just go like all into the horror aspect.
And that actually does intrigue me a lot, because as you said, the first one being more action-based is what it is, but the idea of going an Alan Wake game that leans fully into the horror actually sounds quite exciting.
I wonder if they'll get the Duracell deal back.
Oh, that was actually pretty fucking cool. The fact that the batteries you used to charge your flashlight were specifically Duracell brand batteries.
Yeah, it was pretty much your ammunition was Duracell through that whole game.
Yeah. Because your flashlight had like normal mode, and it also had weapon mode where it would defeat the shadow monsters, and that just chewed through batteries. Almost feels like that would be a bad branding for your fucking flashlight brand. Is in this game, the flashlight will be very powerful, but the batteries will last like maybe 10 seconds at max power. Cool, sign us up. We want to be known as a battery that dies in 10 seconds in a life or death situation.
But what's that in a dangerous situation? Better hope the batteries don't go out. Buy Duracell, they go out.
Oh, Jesus. Another game that we, once again, got very little information about, but I found quite intriguing, was Nightingale. The one where it's like traveling between different worlds and also has some base building and cooperative harvesting / fighting giants.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Victorian aesthetic steampunk thing going on.
Yeah. One of the things that was weird, or not weird, but cool about it was, unlike other base building games like, say, 7 Days to Die, where you're fighting the same variety of monster every time you play, from the looks of this one, there was like a whole bunch of different worlds you can go to, and different worlds had different like enemies that you'd be fighting. So it's probably not completely randomly generated and random, but there are probably different like world types that have different types of enemies that you'd fight and different resources that you're trying to harvest. So it looks pretty fucking cool based off that.
Yeah, it's I'm not into that type of game more often than not, but this one looked interesting enough that I'm definitely keeping an eye on it, and I might jump onto it.
Yeah. So that one definitely actually looks pretty fucking cool, at least to me. I can understand why it wouldn't to others. What else was announced? I got more information.
There's Splitting Heads.
Splitting Heads. I don't remember that one.
That was that weird like Tokyo like game where it's like the head broke open into a bunch of
Hideo Kojima one.
Yeah. No, I don't think this was Kojima. I think it was just for people that worked on Silent Hill.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't actually made by Hideo Kojima, but they made a lot of references to Hideo Kojima's Boken studio during the opening trailer. Yeah, so that one also is another one that we know very little about based off the trailer, but looks fascinating. We got more information. I mostly mentioned this one because I know Matt was excited for. Not that I think it looks bad. It's just this was absolutely a game Matt was looking forward to. Forspoken. We got another trailer for that one, which is the isekai video game where you go from Earth to a different world and have a whole bunch of magic powers there, but everyone thinks you're the demon because you don't fit in their world. The trailer actually made it look pretty fucking cool with the different stuff that you are capable of doing and whatnot.
Yeah, it's definitely a game I'm interested in seeing how it goes, but again, it's one of the situations where it's not really a game I tend to play a lot of.
Yeah, it's in a similar boat for me. I will probably follow it, but I don't know if I'll buy it right away.
And it's time for our annual coin flip with this one, but we also got Sonic Frontier, which is an open world Sonic game which seems to have bosses roaming the overworld.
So we kind of watch party the Game Awards with a couple of our friends, and one of them brought up the fatal flaw of any open world Sonic game, which I am nervous about this game. Once again, it is a coin flip. They could very possibly end up being a good game. But the big thing about Sonic games is you're supposed to go fast, but for an open world exploration and puzzle solving game, you kind of need to go slow to fully absorb the entire environment. So I am nervous that this one is going to be another one of those juxtapositions of the character wants to go fast, but the game wants you to go slow, and which one are you going to choose to go? But it looks neat. There's nothing from the trailer that makes me think the game's going to be bad. There is just themes that run the risk of being traps that are going to cause it to be bad.
And that's the thing with most Sonic games. The whole comment, it's a coin flip. It literally is. We never know until, the day of release what a Sonic game is going to be, unfortunately.
Although, speaking of Sonic, we also got a trailer for Sonic 2, and we finally got to hear Idris Elba as Knuckles. And, man, I wasn't sure about this movie. I was looking forward to it. I figured even if it's a fucking flop, it's going to be a fun popcorn movie to watch. Watching it looks like it's going to be pretty fucking good.
Yeah, with the first Sonic movie, I was jokingly excited for it, where it's like, okay, let's go see the Sonic movie. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It should be funny. And this one, I'm actually I actually kind of really want to see this one.
That fucking first interaction we get to see between Knuckles and Sonic, where Knuckles is calling Sonic out for saying, "Oh, you think I need your power?" And then he fucking throws him to the ground, and then it cuts there, but presumably then Knuckles pulls out a knife and starts skinning Sonic alive, if I had to guess. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be really fucking good.
Yeah, well, what is it? Knuckles is as strong as Sonic is fast. You can figure out what that means yourself, but that's the rules placed by the Sega team.
Yeah, it's and obviously Knuckles is a bad guy. That's how he's introduced in the game, so it makes sense that that's how he's introduced in the movie. It seems like Dr. Robotnik, who actually looks like Dr. Robotnik now, has managed to manipulate Knuckles into believing that Sonic is the bad guy and Robotnik is a good guy.
I mean, I believe that's also what happened in the games.
Yeah, and he's found the Chaos Emeralds finally, so those are getting introduced into the universe. So presumably what's going to end up happening is he uses Knuckles to keep Sonic busy while he steals the Chaos Emeralds, and then the moment he steals the Chaos Emeralds, Knuckles is going to realize that Robotnik was actually the bad guy. And potentially we'll end up getting a team up between Knuckles and Sonic by the end of the movie. They might leave that for Sonic 3 for them to actually work together.
I think you mean Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, you're right. Sonic and Knuckles. Fuck Tails. Also known as Miles per hour.
Another movie we actually got a trailer for was Across the Spider-Verse, Part 1.
That one must have been before I joined the call, because I joined...
Well, it was during the Game Awards. We just got it released by Sony.
Oh, okay, that explains. I completely missed that. I did not realize we got that trailer.
Yeah, so it's a sequel to Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales as the lead, and it looks like it continues off right where the end credit scene of him laying in his bed when Spider-Gwen calls out to him, and it looks like it continues on from there. She has the ability to travel dimensions more freely now, and it looks like we're getting Spider-Man 2077.
Oh, that's fucking hype as hell. I love Spider-Man 2077. He's such a fucking good character. So getting him into the Spider-Verse is something I am absolutely into.
Yeah, and they're calling it Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, so it looks like we're getting multiple movies in this one.
Yep. Oscar Isaac has been casted in this one.
Yep.
He doesn't have a character listed with him, but anytime Oscar Isaacs is into something, I'm fully into it, as I have stated in the past.
It looks really good, and considering how good Into the Spider-Verse was, I am looking forward to what they're going to pull off with this one.
Yep, Into the Spider-Verse did the story that should have been very wacky and weird in a very sincere way. Like, yes, it was still wacky and weird, but they did it in a very sincere way, and it was a very enjoyable movie. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Across the Spider-Verse, Part 1 and future parts.
And then, really, the last thing I have to mention, and this one was from the Game Awards, we're getting Among Us VR.
Yep. That's a whole fucking thing. This might be what causes VR to become a thing. Not that VR isn't a thing now, but I don't think there's a massive audience for VR right now, and it's more so like specific people and eccentrics, essentially, who have VR consoles and actually use them regularly. But if you make a game that most of the world played for at least a month, and tell them they can now play it in VR and be that much closer to the action, it could definitely help sell a lot of VR consoles, which could make game developers more comfortable investing in making proper VR games. So this might be the game that makes VR a mainstream thing.
Actually, one other thing I did want to mention is the Matrix Awakens.
Right, yes. That's the game that's currently free on PlayStation 5 and Xbox One that goes through the story of the original Matrix trilogy, from what we can tell.
It looks like. So what's released right now is like a tech demo, interactive demo type thing, from what I understand. And I have been hearing a lot of people give comments of its like almost indistinguishable from like the movie that we originally saw with the original Matrix when you're looking at it, versus sometimes bordering on Uncanny Valley.
Yeah. It's a little bit hard to tell. It's very Uncanny Valley for me. The part that we saw in the trailer for it opened with a straight up scene from the original movie, and if that was something that they redid in game and made it look that good, then power to them. But I'm convinced it was literally them showing a scene from the movie and then cutting to gameplay. But the faces are a little bit too close to the Uncanny Valley for me. But yeah, it does look super fucking hype. And I'm looking forward to it. This is also like one of the first major games made on Unreal Engine 5, as far as I can tell.
I believe so.
So it's not just a tech demo for the game itself, it's a tech demo for Unreal Engine 5. Huh. I don't know. It looks super cool. I don't have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X, so I can't tech demo it, but I'm sure it's good.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be a lot of stuff coming out that are worth keeping an eye on at this point.
Yeah.
But with that, I think it is time to get into our main topic for the day.
So, while we did just talk about, briefly mention Oscar Isaac and how I'm a fan of anything he's in, there's a very different actor in the movie that we're talking about today who I have a very different opinion of.
I know, I do have to ask. Last we talked about this, you've only seen half of the movie. Have you had the chance to see the second half?
So, fun fact, so my plan was to wait for it to come out on streaming, or I was hoping it would come out on like the Cineplex store or Amazon Prime or something like that, where you could rent it to watch it at home. And my plan was to watch it at home once I could. That didn't end up being a thing, so I did end up going back to the theater to try watching it again. And the fucking night I picked is the recent blizzard that we fucking had. That's when I fucking went to go see it. And the entire time I was sitting in the theater, I was thinking to myself, I swear to fucking God, if the power goes out in the middle of this movie again, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. It didn't, so we're good. It was just one of those things where I was real ready to get real pissed off.
Yeah, you seem to have picked ideal times to watch Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is the movie we're reviewing today.
Yeah.
You just seem to pick the worst situations.
It was just one of those things where it wasn't even me like seeing it's blizzarding out and going, I should watch the movie now that the weather's terrible. It was me like 2 days before the blizzard thinking it's not going to be out on streaming in time. I'm going to buy some tickets. I have free time on this night. I'm going to buy a ticket to see it on this night. And then the night comes, I'm like, of course it's fucking blizzarding on the night that I bought a ticket to see this movie. But yes, Ghostbusters Afterlife. Initial thoughts. Did you like it? Did you dislike it?
This honestly might be my favorite movie this year so far.
I can definitely see that. I really enjoyed this movie. I will be honest, there were some moments I was less than psyched about. But fucking Paul Rudd was an absolute delight in this movie, as he is in every movie he's in.
That's fair. Paul Rudd was definitely good, but I think the person who actually stole the show was McKenna Grace playing Phoebe Spangler.
Yeah, she was also fucking phenomenal. Yes, I was a big fan of her as well. So my biggest gripe about this movie isn't even Finn fucking Wolfhard, who, in case you're unaware, I'm bringing this meme back from the dead, is the actor who I was referencing before we started talking about the movie of I am less than fond of this actor. He wasn't even my biggest gripe with this movie. My biggest gripe with this movie was the fucking straw man mother that they created. She's opposed to science in all its forms. She loves her daughter who practices science, but her favorite thing in the world would be as if her daughter stopped practicing science because apparently science tears families apart. It was a weird stance for her to take.
Very topical in the modern climate.
Yeah. So I was less... she was probably the thing that made me the least happy with the movie. But overall, I did quite enjoy the movie. So shall we get into the movie itself then?
Yeah, so this movie is... To say it's a sequel to the original Ghostbusters movies doesn't seem right. This feels more like it's a story within the Ghostbusters universe that's tied to the originals.
Yeah, it's in the same universe and it takes place after, but sequel just isn't the right word to it. At the same time, it also feels very much like an homage to the original Ghostbusters movies, with every like reference that they make being like a positive reminder of those movies.
Yeah,
but
this
less
was...
so in a cash grabby, remember this, and more so in like we want to invoke the feelings that you had watching Ghostbusters the first time.
Yeah, and it was written and directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of the Ivan Reitman who did the original ones. And Jason actually grew up on the sets of the original Ghostbusters movie, so he's very much lived through Ghostbusters in like a very unique sense that has, I think, given him quite the interesting perspective on the universe that allowed him to actually do a successful, in a sense, soft reboot, if you want to put it that way. But a lot of people have been complaining that it just rehashes and it's a poor Ghostbusters 3, but it's not a Ghostbusters 3, and I never once expected that. It's impossible to make Ghostbusters 3 currently. Like, there's no way we'll have that Ghostbusters 3 people want outside of maybe the Ghostbusters video game. I think that's the closest we ever got to Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah, it is not meant to be the next movie in the Ghostbusters series. It's meant to be its own thing. It's not even meant to set up future Ghostbuster movies. It's just meant to be its own individual story that essentially tells the life of a family in the fucking Ghostbusters universe, and is very much so fucking positive. Well, send off seems like a very dark phrase for me to use, but a loving goodbye to Harold Ramis.
Oh yeah, it was a amazing goodbye to Ramis, and how they did it was perfect. And they did a good job of, like, I feel like having his character without him being able to play the character. I feel like they were very true to what his character was. And
like we get to see Egon Spangler at the very end of the movie in ghost form, because spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie yet, once again, fucking spoiler for every topic we discuss on this podcast. We're going to spoil it. But he dies in the very beginning of the like first 5 minutes. It's him capturing either the Keymaster or the Gatekeeper. It's unclear which one. Bringing it back to his host to try and capture Gozer once and for all, and dying in the process because his plan backfires ever so slightly. So at the very end of the film, we get to see him in like corporeal ghost form, where we actually see him. But throughout the movie up until that point, we see his effect on the world. Like we see him turning on lights, we see him pointing lamps towards certain points he wants people to focus on, and opening drawers to find stuff. So you very much, without having an actor playing him, have the character of Egon Spengler's ghost throughout the beginning of the fucking movie anyways, and they do a fantastic job of bringing life to that character, which once again is a poor choice of phrasing. I'm sorry.
Going into this movie, I was paused. Like, they tried to play it off that it wasn't Egon's fame. Like, oh, who are these people? Like, who's the mysterious Ghostbuster at the beginning? Blah, 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 and stuff. It was very clear it was going to be Egon's family in some capacity. Yeah. And going into it, I knew because of like the death of the actor and the way that the movie was very clearly going to pay off like an homage to him in some aspect. I was like, there's two moments that are going to make me tear up in this theater, and it's going to be if he ends up helping Phoebe at the end to like finish off the person, which ended up being the thing that happened. He does like pretty much the Goku father-son Kamehameha from the Cell fight with her. But the other one that's like, and it didn't happen. And I don't know if I'm sad or not it didn't, but in the original Ghostbusters, the joke that they would have would, when they were lighting up the proton packs, it would go Do, and then it would go to Ray, and he'd go Ray, and then Egon making the joke would go Egon when he turns on his, so the Do, Ray, Me.
Yeah, instead of me, it's Egon.
And because Phoebe is so much Egon as a character in this one, I was expecting there would be a point where the other Ghostbusters would, like, two of them would be lined up with her, and they would do the same thing, and then she would say Phoebe, never knowing the joke at all, and that would be, like, a really fun payoff to, like, she has his sense of humor.
Yeah, which, while they didn't do that exact thing, they absolutely did her having his sense of humor, because at the very beginning of the movie, when they're driving into town, the mother makes a reference to the fact that Phoebe doesn't have any friends and has a hard time being friends, and tells her to just walk up to someone and start a conversation. Don't be afraid to do that. That's a great way to make friends. To which Finn Wolfhard's character, whose name exists, but I constantly was just overwriting it as Finn every time his name was said in the movie.
It's Trevor.
Sure. So Finn turns around in the car, and says, "Tell me a joke." To which Phoebe says, "Why can you never trust Adams? They make up everything." Which, first of all, I fucking lost it in the movie because I am also a bit of a science nerd and love that joke, and happened to be wearing a t-shirt that had that exact joke printed on it when I went to see the movie in theater. And throughout the movie, there are moments of her trying to break the tension by, like, telling a joke, and all of her jokes are just the driest dad humorist fucking jokes of all time. I think the peak one, for me at least, is, what do you call a dead polar bear? Whatever you want, it's dead, it can't hear you. So it's just a whole bunch of her making just really fucking fantastic jokes throughout the entire movie, and I very much have air quotes around the word fantastic there.
Yeah, like I said, like McKenna Grace doing Phoebe Spangler was like probably my favorite thing in this movie, and though it didn't set up sequels, and I have no idea how they would do a sequel with these cast being the Ghostbusters specifically, I would love to see more of this character in the universe.
Even if we don't see more in this universe, it has become a situation where McKenna Grace has become an actor I'm aware of now, and I'm going to watch other shit she's done, because she actually did fucking fantastic in this movie, and I assume she is good in other things she's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the plot starts off with that scene of Egon fighting against the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper, catches one of them, tries to catch the other one, but doesn't have enough power in the system, ends up dying of a heart attack before, just after hiding the other one. And then we cut to the new family, which are like, oh, we're out of money.
We say heart attack, but we also, in the last moments of his life, see him sitting in a chair and then see a ghost grab him through the chair. So I think he died of a ghost.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I would probably have a heart attack at that age if that situation happened.
Quite possibly. But I feel like heart attack is their way of saying, I don't believe in ghosts, and natural causes explanation if ghosts don't exist.
Which I love the establishment of the Ghostbusters universe, that between movies, everyone forgets about ghosts again.
Yeah, so I enjoy how this is, like, they're very much trying to ground the Ghostbusters in our universe, essentially, in that the first time Ghostbusters start busting ghosts, no one believes the ghosts are real. When Ghostbusters 2 comes out, the EPA agent is very much on the belief that they're just drugging people and putting on elaborate light shows, and it's still ghosts aren't real, in spite of the ample evidence that ghosts are real. And then in the 30 years since fucking Ghostbusters 2, and when this movie starts, everyone except for Paul Rudd has forgotten that ghosts exist again.
Yep.
It's just like, if we had real tangible proof that ghosts existed at any point in our history, I don't think in the span of 30 years everyone would be like, nah, fuck it, that didn't happen.
I mean, I'm willing to accept people outside of New York. Possibly not, because if you look at the first two movies, there really wasn't anything to really concretely say ghosts exist, because you have to remember, I don't think, people walking around with a video camera in their pocket would have been a thing that would have been likely at the time. So I can see people like in New York being like, yeah, fucking ghosts do exist. They're like, it happened twice. And the people outside like, sure, New York.
That is fair, I suppose. People in the rest of the world might be a little bit less aware of that fact. Because they do specifically say that the ghost attack happened in New York, and they didn't have ghosts anywhere else in the world. It was specifically New York got infested with ghosts.
Which I'm sure there's something tying back to Ivo Shandor about his, like, ghost, like, network that he created.
Yeah, probably. I did enjoy that payoff of Ivo Shandor establishing the selenium mines, which is where he got the metal to make the girders for the tower in New York. And they have him, clearly his end goal is he gets resurrected when Gozer comes back, so that he can rule alongside Gozer. And Gozer, like, hears his, like, monologue about that and immediately just fucking murders the shit out of him. Like, nope, that's not how this plan works, but okay.
Now, a fun thing for you here. Did you happen to notice who played Ivo Shandor?
That was J.K. Simmons, wasn't it?
Yep, J.K. Simmons is playing Ivo Shandor.
Yep. Once again, so J.K. Simmons, even though he's a fantastic actor, and I don't consider him to be like this kind of actor, I can't help but see him as J. Jonah Jameson every time I see him in a role. So it was very much so not, in my head, it wasn't J.K. Simmons playing Ivo Shandor, it was J. Jonah Jameson going undercover to get the real scoop as Ivo Shandor. Is my personal headcanon.
Another interesting thing that a lot of people also missed is Gozer was actually Olivia Wilde.
I recognized her, I couldn't figure out who it was, but Olivia Wilde, that does make.
Yeah, obviously the voice and the CG touch-up is not her specifically, but for most of the stuff that where they needed a practical, it was Olivia Wilde.
Yeah, no, I could, Googling Olivia Wilde now so I could confirm what her face looks like. I can absolutely see her in Gozer. So, yeah, I can see what you mean. It was just one of those things where I kept seeing her, I was like, I recognize that face. I can't tell who it is, and it's because the voice was probably throwing me off a fair bit.
Well, they did a really good job of recreating Gozer from the first movie.
Yeah, and the CG covering up details to make it look more like the first Gozer. Hit it quite well. But yeah, you can see it if you're looking for it. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, as the story goes, essentially they get the will that, family member died, and they're going to collect debt, but there's like nothing for them there except for the house, and obviously Egon starts testing Phoebe, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, he wants to make sure someone's there to stop the apocalypse in his stead, and so he essentially makes sure Phoebe is up to the task by giving her different science tests. I mean, the first science test is, do you know how to open a game of chess? And after 2 moves, he's like, yep, good enough, let's go.
You passed the 2 moves.
Yep. Also, if you look at it, her 2 moves are terrible because she sacrifices a knight to get a pawn, which is not a great move to make in chess, but fuck it, whatever. Maybe his test was, are you too focused on chess and that's the only thing you're good at? Oh, you're not that great at chess, you're probably good at other things. And then he tasks her with fixing the proton pack, and once she does that, he's like, yep, you're clearly my granddaughter. You're gonna do this from here.
Now, actually, we kind of glossed over a few characters that I feel like we should probably mention that haven't introduced at this point. So we get Podcast, which is her friend at school, because she goes to summer school not because she flunked, but because she's so smart, she wants to keep going to school.
Yeah, the options her mother gives her is go to summer school with a bunch of people who flunked through school, or help her clean asbestos out of the attic. And Phoebe makes the wise choice of I'm going to go to summer school. Now that you mentioned Podcast, I do have to say, felt a little bit personally called out by Podcast, but also he very quickly became one of my favorite characters, so I'm okay with being called out by Podcast. His entire character is, he's making a podcast about
everything.
Oh, fuck.
Kind of like us.
It's specifically about the mystical world, as far as I can tell. I forget what he called his podcast, but his one and only subscriber is Ray Stans, so that's fun. But he, oh fuck, what was I saying? He is a very charming character in how like genuine he is and his like interest in ghosts and how he believes in them. One of the things I fucking love about this character that a lot of movies get wrong is anytime you have the conspiracy theorist who believes that ghosts are real or whatever your movie has is real when no one else believes it's real, and then you have that moment where you finally run into a ghost or a vampire or a whatever it is in your movie, and then that crackpot conspiracy theorist will start like jumping up and down shouting like, I knew it, I was right all along, fuck you, fuck you. That seems always a little weird to me, because if you actually did know it all along, then you getting the confirmation shouldn't do anything for you. The confirmation only makes sense if like you were starting to doubt yourself. So the fact that he has just no fucking reaction to actually seeing ghosts are real is fucking beautiful to me, because it means like he was fully assured in his beliefs that ghosts were real, to the point where seeing physical evidence of ghosts being real, he was like, yeah, of course, they're real. Like, what do you expect me to react about here? It's like if I told you dogs were real and then a dog walked in the room, I wouldn't be like, fuck yeah, see, look, dogs are real. Proof all along, I was right all along. It's like, no, yeah, of course, dogs are real.
That's just incorrect. That's how everyone reacts when a dog enters the room.
Yeah, dog was a bad example to use, because I wouldn't be shouting dogs are real, see, but I would just jumping up and down shouting, fuck yeah, dogs! So that was a bad example. But you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Anytime the conspiracy theorist like gets real excited when the conspiracy is proven true, always seems a little bit awkward and weird to me. So the fact that Podcast was just blank expression, I don't care, this is obviously what was happened, is very cool to me.
Oh, definitely. In the same school vein, we also get introduced to Gary Gruberson, who is played by Paul Rudd, who is the science teacher who doesn't care about the science class and just gets them to watch like horror movies.
So I laughed out fucking loud at most of the shit Paul Rudd said. Not most of the shit, but there were several moments, like that first introduction to him teaching the class, where it's him wheeling in an old CRT TV, commenting about how the only thing the school has is fucking VHS. And then he's like, all right, like 10 and 11-year-olds, here's what we're going to do today. And he pulls out fucking Cujo and explains how it's about a rabid dog killing a bunch of people. So imagine if it's Beethoven crossed with just a dog that kills people. And it's just like, man, the idea of a science teacher who's phoning it in so fucking hard that he's just putting this shit on for his students while he goes off and does science in the other room is beautiful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of like the Ghostbusters like fan base references came from him as well, being like he was clearly a fan of the Ghostbusters himself.
Yeah.
Another character that gets introduced to that's kind of big to the story, which unfortunately I feel is probably the most misused character in the story, is Lucky, played by Celeste O'Connor.
Yeah, she unfortunately kind of got relegated to romantic interest / damsel in distress at the very end.
Yeah.
So we didn't get great use of her character, but I did enjoy her character and felt like she had a lot of potential in that.
Oh yeah, she did a great job. It's just she was just so misused in the story that like I feel like plucking her out of the story makes no difference, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But those are our main characters that we're kind of working with through the story.
So, just to go to another, I don't know why I'm just telling funny moments, because the movie is not, it has comedic moments, but it's not played as a comedy. It's played as a relatively serious film about kids trying to kill ghosts.
Well, it's both. Ghostbusters has always been a horror comedy franchise.
Yeah. I just mean, like, it's not pure comedy. There are other elements to it. So the fact that I'm only talking about the parts that I found fucking hilarious and caused me to chortle in the theater and feel bad for other people, is not the best. And we'll continue talking about the plot in a second. But in Finn Wolfhard's first introduction to Lucky, he's found her attractive. He's trying to apply for a job where she works, so that he could get closer to her. And she asks how old he is, and he's like, "I'm 17." And she's like, "Okay." And then towards the end of the movie, just before the climax starts to happen, we see her and Finn looking into a deep pit where Phoebe theorizes that that's where they drop sacrifices, and Lucky makes the comment about how they're probably sacrificing virgins. Too bad for you, Finn Wolfhard. Ha 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 ha. And which Phoebe pipes in, of course he's a virgin. He's 15. Statistically speaking, most of them are. And Lucky gets, like, real flabbergasted, because, like, what the fuck? You told me you were 17. You're only 15? What's going on here? And Finn's response is, I'm almost 16. I turned 16 in February. And Lucky's perfect fucking response of, it's June? Fuck, I legitimately lost it in the theater. Oh, God. Like, yeah, no, you're not almost 16. You've been 15 for 4 fucking months. Fuck right off. Finn fucking Wolfhard. Sorry, I shouldn't be mean to Finn Wolfhard. He seems like kind of a shitty teen, but I'm sure he's a nice person. All right, so that's the other comedic moment I wanted to address. Going back to where we were with the plot. Oh no, we weren't on the plot. You were talking about underused characters we hadn't addressed. Had I used that as a moment to talk about my favorite scene involving them?
Yeah, essentially I was just getting at that the character of Lucky was just misused, and again, you could have plucked them out and it would have made no difference. But I guess they want to focus more on the family aspect, but even podcasts got a lot more screen time and development.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is sometimes. They wanted to do it very much so played more into the family film genre than the traditional Ghostbusters. Not in like a bad way, it's just it was a family movie and it followed children and a family getting closer together and overcoming obstacles that get in the way of them being a happy family.
Yeah.
So it was also about reconciliation between a father and a daughter who had been separated for most of the daughter's life. So yes, very much so a family movie. So unfortunately, it followed the family a lot more. As he said, podcast got a lot more development, but I felt that was less so because they wanted podcast to be a character, and more so because they needed. Phoebe was very much the star of the movie. Like, yes, it followed Finn a fair bit as well, but it was mostly about Phoebe's journey. And so they needed a character for Phoebe to talk to in all the scenes when she was figuring stuff out. So making podcast have more of a role just kind of naturally happened as a result of that. And unfortunately, for did you say his name was Trevor?
Yeah.
Yeah, that name rings 0 fucking bells for me. I 100% just overrode it with Finn every time his name was said. Trevor, a lot of his like development scenes was him fucking around in a car on his own, or the brief stint he spent working at the burger shop. So,
well, I feel like they did a good job of explaining, like, each of the characters that end up being the Ghostbuster, like, 4 in this one have their own skill set in a sense, where, Trevor is clearly, like, very mechanically gifted when it comes to engineering. He's able to restore the Ecto-1, no problem.
And on that note, they actually do a great job of setting that up, and this is something I only noticed watching through on my second time of the first half, which was when they're driving from, I guess it's New York where they start, driving from New York down to Somerville. I think that's the name of the city. Anyways, when they're doing that drive, there is a brief shot of them on the side of the road with the mother and Phoebe sitting on top of the car, while Trevor is under the hood tweaking something with the engine. So presumably the car broke down, and Trevor was the one to fix it up. So they do a good job of actually briefly establishing that he is well versed in cars, even if he can't drive because he's 15 and failed the driver's test. They do a good job of establishing he is mechanically gifted.
Yeah, and then obviously Phoebe is the scientific mind. Podcast is kind of like the tech guy in a sense.
He's kind of the tech guy. He also is kind of the researcher because he's the one who does the read up on Gozer in town.
And
So
then obviously Lucky is kind of like the athlete of the group in a sense, the more physical, like trooper one that gets in the face of the creature.
yeah, sometimes she literally gets inside the creature.
But
She
yeah,
becomes-
this point of the story is kind of like where one of my first issues with it comes up, and that's the fact that Egon guides Phoebe to the ghost trap and then lets her open it in a sense.
yeah. So, in theory, because for Gozer to come into the world, they need the gatekeeper and the keymaster to both be there in their dog form. There are some other steps that are required that I'm not going to get into, but it needs both the gatekeeper and the keymaster to do it. One of those two is currently trapped inside a ghost trap, and Egon, in his attempt to test Phoebe, straight up leads her to the ghost trap that is very well hidden, that holds one of the two major ghosts, and she inevitably brings it straight to Paul Rudd, who opens it up. Gary Gruberson, who opens it up as a test. So there's two very foolish decisions by adults here. Well, one adult and one ghost. In that Egon should not have led her straight to the ghost trap. He could have led her to underground to the proton pack and stuff like that and had her fuck around with that. But leading her to the ghost trap is a foolish decision, if you ask me. And Gary Gruberson, who knows ghosts are real, sees that the trap is real, and his initial reaction is, fuck it, let's open it up and release what's ever trapped inside. Not a great fucking decision, Mr. Gruberson.
To be fair, I don't think he knew the gravity of what ghost was locked inside.
Yeah, I don't think he understood exactly what ghost, but he did still make the poor decision of let's release a ghost.
Yeah, because in the Ghostbusters universe, the default ghost is just cartoon character, and then beyond that, there's like the world-ending ghosts, and I can't blame him for thinking, oh, this definitely isn't a world-ending ghost in this box. Why would it just be sitting around with children?
True, but at the same time, even the cartoon character ghosts were clearly a nuisance to society, and he had no means of getting the cartoon character ghost back into the box once he released it, as far as he knew. Like, it wasn't until after they released the trap that they found the proton pack, so I don't know. It worked out fine at the end. It was a weird decision for them to make. In particular, it worked out a little less than fine for Gary, but he survived, so nothing bad.
True.
So yeah, that was a strange decision by Egon, but yeah, it happens. Presumably, it was one of those things where he realized trapping. I'm just going to call it the Keymaster because I have no way of distinguishing which one it was, and it's just going to make it easier rather than saying both names each time. So it might have been something to the effect of him realizing that if he just traps the Keymaster, the Gatekeeper is still out there and potentially has a means to release the Keymaster if given enough time. So he wanted to get her aware of the danger and actively participating in stopping it. Because it's pretty clear. So one of the cool things we see that Egon did during his time while here in Somerville was he found the specific portal to the afterlife that the ghosts were going to come up through, and jerry-rigged the shit out of a device that had a ghost sensor, so the moment there was any ghost activity there, it would trigger and turn on, I think it was like 5 or 6 proton packs, all pointing towards the hole so that they would cross their beams and just beat the shit out of any ghosts trying to climb up through the ghost portal.
Yeah.
So, very ingenious engineering, but I think it's very clear that that is only a stopgap and a way of buying time. He still needs to actually deal with Gozer, the Gatekeeper, and the Keymaster. And he was probably under the assumption that just trapping the Keymaster wasn't going to be enough, and he would need Phoebe to actively catch the gatekeeper, and was just hoping revealing the trap to her would get her to investigate further and find out exactly what's going on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Once again, not a great call, but it
No.
worked out.
Yeah, and he ends up teaching, like, it's clear he's trying to teach her to be ready for whatever happens as well, because he gets her to repair the proton pack and go through that stuff. And we get the great scene of her and Podcast testing it out as well, which leads straight to their first ghost encounter with, I believe it's Muncher?
Muncher. Yeah, that's what they called it, Muncher. Which was a nice little nod. It's clearly a different ghost, but very reminiscent of Slimer in both aesthetic and also just like the kind of cute nature of it. This one seems a little bit more dangerous than Slimer because he seems fully capable of essentially firing a Gatling gun of shreds of metal from his mouth. But still a nice ghost. Also, a fun moment where Podcast fully assumes that the death whistle is going to be what defeats Muncher, and it just fucking pisses Muncher off, and that's when they decide to use the proton pack on the trap. They have a slightly rough time with the first deployment of the trap, because we find out that sliding the trap along the ground and getting it to end up face up is not as easy as they make it seem in the Ghostbuster movies.
Well, these are also kids compared to them.
Yeah. But we find out that there is a pretty solid workaround in the trap that they use for most of the movie, is on a little RC car, and because of that, it's always face up because you're not throwing it, you're driving it.
Yeah, I do enjoy the new tech essentially that they have, which feels like it's a natural progression of what they have already.
Yeah, the modifications, for the most part, that were made to Ecto-1, because the RC car, while it is technically distinct, was stored inside Ecto-1. The gunner seat that was attached to Ecto-1, so someone could fire a proton pack without destroying Ecto-1 from Ecto-1. It was a very nice touch. Stuff like that. Very cool. And it showed that, because it would have been a bit of a letdown if they were still using all the tech that they used 30 years ago, because what was Egon doing over these past 30 years besides setting up that little proton pack gun pointing at the Hell portal? So the fact that modifications were made to Ecto-1 and these new techs were developed kind of shows that even when he's not fighting ghosts, he's still working on the tech he uses to fight ghosts, which was a nice touch.
Yeah, and you would have had to do stuff like this, considering we saw he also rigged up that chamber to stop the ghosts coming through automatically. He was clearly working on stuff to make it easier for himself as well.
Yeah, I think initially, especially when the other Ghostbusters didn't come with him, his assumption was that this was something he was going to have to do entirely on his own. And so he had to come up with technology that would make it easier for one person to fight ghosts, because up until now he'd been doing it as a team of 4. So he needed to create technology that would make it slightly easier for him to do it entirely on his own. And like, clearly he did some shit right, because he did manage to catch the Keymaster entirely on his own. So he put in the work and did the time and got results.
Yeah, and I think now's actually probably a good time to talk about this, but the splitting up of the original Ghostbusters, how did you feel about that?
Well, first of all, it kind of needed to happen. You couldn't have them all still working together in universe. Otherwise, more people would probably be aware of ghosts. But also, the fact that ghosts stop attacking makes sense. Them all going their own separate ways, having a big falling out. It felt a little weird and a little bit kind of, I mean, scripted feels like the wrong word because it was in a script, so obviously it was scripted. It felt fabricated. That's a good way to put it. It felt like something that wouldn't naturally happen, and more so something that they made happen for the plot. But I can see how it could happen. It just didn't feel entirely natural to me.
I mean, I felt that quite a bit of it actually worked out pretty well, because as is explained, that effectively they were ghostbusting so good that ghosts just kind of stopped happening, that they had to deal with. And then Venkman was the first one to leave, turning it into like a profitable method of like just his method and stuff like that. So Venkman just kind of dipping because there's money to be made somewhere else sounds very much like a Venkman thing.
Yeah, I can get behind Venkman. The
why Ray and Winston didn't believe Egon, I have no idea.
yeah, that's the part that I find the most stretch, and then the fact that them not believing Egon feels like a bit of a stretch to me. Egon stealing everything after trying to explain it to them, it feels a little bit fake to me, but I can kind of understand why if he believes the end of the world is coming. Granted, according to the charts, the end of the world wasn't coming for 30 years. Maybe 25, let's assume 5 years passed in the time. So he didn't need to steal everything and set up right fucking away. But even so, he believes the end of the world's coming. He believes the stakes are that high. I can kind of understand him stealing. The fact that everyone just kind of stopped talking to each other as a result of that also feels not genuine. Like, if I went through something that high of stakes with my 3 friends, I feel like I wouldn't just fall out of touch with them immediately afterwards if we stopped doing that high stakes event together.
Yeah, it sounds like they just didn't talk to each other except for Janine, who was kind of like the only thing keeping them connected.
Yeah. Although I guess they didn't fully stop talking, like while they weren't talking to each other, Sans clearly was keeping tabs on everyone because he knew where the other two were at the time. Like, he didn't realize that Egon had passed away, but he was aware of where both Winston and Venkman, thank you, where both of them were. So he was clearly keeping tabs on them, and he was able to reach them and get them to go down to Somerville. After that very abrupt ending to the phone call where he heard the end of the world is actually happening. I'm Venkman's granddaughter, and he died. Like, clearly Stans was capable of contacting both Winston and Venkman and being like, yo, we should go down to Somerville because some shit's going down. Because they managed to show up in time for the fucking climax of the film to defeat Gozer one last time.
Well, as we find out during one of the end credit scenes, Winston was pretty much paying the rent for Ray, and I think they all 3 of them stayed in New York, so it makes sense that they would know where each other were.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt like, there is the level of, like, quote-unquote scripted forced that makes sense for it, but I feel like they did it in a way that felt natural for the universe without kind of breaking the character's way of doing things.
I'm not mad about it. It's just one of those things where I felt like it probably could have been handled a little bit more. But it is what it is. It's not the end of the world.
Yep.
The end of the world is what was happening. So that all. So we get to. So Muncher escapes their first attempt to catch him, and they have to catch him driving through the city as he heads back towards the mines. And of course, firing a proton pack wantonly throughout a city causes a lot of damage. This is the part where I have the biggest issue with the mother character, because the kids get arrested, obviously for destroying all that property, and all their shit gets taken away. The mother, who, while sitting having dinner with Gary Gruberson, has the ghost fly directly between her and Gary Gruberson, essentially tells Phoebe to fuck right off with all her nonsense about ghosts, because ghosts aren't real, and you're just talking science nonsense again, and I don't want to hear any of your science nonsense. And it's for the best if your dreams die here and now, so you give up the science bullshit. Is essentially the conversation she has with Phoebe while they're in the fucking police station.
Which is such an absurd backwards world thing of, like, science, fuck that. Get a real job like an artist.
Yeah. And it's just... Like, I can understand they need to take the proton pack away for the plot. They kind of need to have shit go wrong without them being able to immediately handle it in order to raise the stakes for the climax. It's just one of those things where the mother tries to support her daughter while also saying some real, just egregious shit like, don't be yourself. It's kind of played for laughs when she says it, but it's more signs that the mother has such a big fucking boner for hating science that she tells her daughter that she doesn't like the way she is because she's into science. It's weird to me, man. I'm not psyched about the mother character, but I can get over it. I'll
Yeah,
get over it. I'm sorry.
and also on that conversation about the police getting involved too, that itself also seems it just was a pointless. Like the only thing it does is serve to establish that Lucky's father is the chief of police for Somerville, and add conflict between Phoebe and her mother. Because even getting the stuff back has nothing to do with the police, just that it's in the police station.
Yeah, and the way they get it, like the entire reason it's in the police station is so that it's behind bars that they can't manage to pick through, because they established that one of Phoebe's skills as a scientist is picking locks, which sure. So Phoebe can't get back to the stuff because it's behind an electronic lock that can't be picked or hacked, and so they have no way to get to it. So the solution ends up being intentionally freeing Muncher so that he munches through the prison cell so that they can get back to their stuff.
Yeah, and this scene could have just like the police, like the aspect of the police is completely meaningless. It could have very much as easily been like a room that was in the house that Egon had set up that she locks it in, and that would have served the same purpose.
Yeah, it's just this scene is where they get arrested by the police, and then the mother fucking comes down hard on Phoebe about practicing science. It's the part that I have the biggest issue with in the movie. It's obviously not a major issue because I still thoroughly enjoyed the movie. It's just this is the part that made me unhappy the most.
Oh yeah, that's the thing too. You can like not enjoy parts of it and still think it was great. Like I said, up to now, this is probably my favorite movie released this year. The only thing that could, well, it probably will be it honestly, is Spider-Man.
Yeah,
maybe the Matrix.
I could see the Matrix taking it, but I mean, fun fact: pre-sales for Spider-Man tickets have already far outseated
Endgame. Yep.
So, the Spider-Man is the movie event of the fucking decade, and it's only 2 years in.
Yeah.
Whatever. I will agree with you. This has been my favorite movie I've seen so far this year. So, but yes, family squabbles over that stuff. Phoebe talking about how she can't believe that mom never told her that her grandfather was Egon Spangler, Ghostbuster. Mom getting all defensive of, you look around here and you see a whole bunch of things that connect you to your grandfather. I look around here and all I see are signs that my father never really loved me. Sure, emotional, heartfelt scene. Cut to like 10 minutes later when the ghost starts leading the mother character around, and she finds the shrine within his lab where there's just a whole bunch of pictures of her on the wall to show that even though Egon Spangler was here because he needed to save the end of the world, he was still keeping tabs on the daughter the entire time because he so deeply cared about her. So
also, he didn't even give her a warning about the fact that one of the two dogs was there.
Yeah, no. It was also one of those things of, like, while they're in the police station arguing, and Phoebe brings up, like, he came here because he thought the end of the world was coming, and the mother's like, the end of the world isn't coming, he's crazy. And Phoebe's like, but what if he was right? It's like, well, if he's not crazy, then he's just an asshole. And it's like, I feel like sacrificing yourself to prevent the end of the world doesn't make you an asshole. And choosing not to drag your daughter to the city where the end of the world is going to start also doesn't make you an asshole. Like, yes, he probably could have done it a bit more delicately, but I don't think the things he did made him an asshole.
Yeah, and just because he was an asshole doesn't mean he was wrong about the world ending.
Yeah. But sure, fuck science.
Woo.
You know, now that I think about it, the amount of times we've just commented on how science sucks, it might be for the best that Matt's not here. That boy actually does approve of science. Alright, well. So what happens next? We've established that the end of the world is in fact coming. I think this is the scene where they go to the bottom of the mine shaft and they've discovered the Hell Portal and all the proton packs that Egon set up.
Yeah, the proton packs, they find that the Evo Shandor just gets up every time it starts and then it gets zapped away. And they realize, oh, we have to do something about this. And they're getting ready to get all that. And this is when the mother and Gary end up getting possessed.
Yeah, so Gary gets possessed in a Walmart by the gatekeeper.
Which
And
I must say, the tiny marshmallow men is so great because they're like literally treating themselves like marshmallows as well.
yeah, it's fucking adorable because it's a bunch of tiny marshmallow men like running around like little babies and like, oh, ho, 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 da, 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 da. And then they just start like biting the shit out of his fingers and like melting chocolate over top of one while it lays on a graham cracker or roasting them over top of a barbecue. Which, first of all, the fact that the barbecues that are set up in this Walmart actually
Yeah.
are capable of producing flame, a little bit fucked, but whatever. Um, uh, it's a whole bunch of like fun stuff like that. Also, Gary Gerberson's just there to buy some fucking ice cream, because his date with the mother did not go well.
Well,
So
it went
presumably he's...
well, but like he's getting a second date.
Oh well, I think the gatekeeper's getting the second date.
That's true.
So he's going to buy some ice cream, and then he finds the giant dog thing, and we get a very cool, what I thought was a very cool moment, which is him running back to his car. And earlier on, when they first released the Keymaster, it caused what was essentially an explosion, and destroyed the windshield of his car. And so when he's running to his car to get away from the Walmart, he just slides over the hood and directly into his car via the windshield that
Yep.
no longer exists. So that was a pretty cool moment. At the same time, the mother is being shown the homage. Nope, that's not the word. The wall of
Collage.
pictures. Collage, thank you. The collage of her life. And is also getting taken over by the gatekeeper. Keymaster. She's the keymaster, he's the gatekeeper.
Now there is something that happens here when the gatekeeper and the keymaster meet that I was like, they didn't need to explain it, but I kind of enjoyed that they took the time to explain it, and that's why Sigourney Weaver's character Dana had the golden dress in the first Ghostbusters, and apparently the gatekeeper just has the ability to just turn whatever they're wearing into that.
Yeah. They also explained the attraction between Sigourney Weaver and... Oh, fuck. What's his name?
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis, thank you. Because she doesn't seem to pay him that much attention in the beginning of the movie. And then we find out that part of the ritual that causes the gatekeeper and the keymaster to summon Gozer into the world is they have to get to at least third base, apparently. So we get that detail added for our knowledge of the world. And then we see them summon Gozer into the world because Paul Rudd breaks the proton packs that are blocking the hell portal. And the mother is just like having a good time at home, harassing her kids for not being the keymaster. And then she runs off into the desert and they summon Gozer. We are now arriving at the climax.
Yeah, so this is the big final act. Now, through this whole point, they are like, oh, he had a plan. This whole farm was meant to be a ghost trap, blah, 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 and all that stuff. I'm like, that still doesn't solve the problem of the power not working.
Yeah, so one of the things I enjoyed, this is another just fun moment, is they go into the secret lab to try and figure out what to do, and they see the model of the house, and Phoebe's like, oh, this is what he was working on all this time, and Finn Wolfhard's just like, but it's so small, it took 30 years? She's like, no, he was doing this to the place fucking above us. This is just a model of what he was doing. So yes, they haven't fixed the power problem. The thing is, they don't realize the power is a problem. We know the power is a problem because we saw it not work the first time around. But they don't. They just realize that this is capacitors and don't understand the full context of how he died. So that's a problem we know is coming, but they don't. And we're going to see how they manage to resolve it in the future.
Yeah, and this part's like, okay, we're finally going to get some stuff with Lucky, and her plan is, no, I'm just going to go to the house and wait.
Yeah, it's we're going to split up. You guys go catch one of the two dogs and then bring it back here. Presumably your mother. You might want to have your mother alive. And we, on the other side, and by we I just mean Lucky on her own, is going to wait at the house. And she's not even going to be like standing there waiting to flip the switch and stamp the pedal. She's just going to be standing inside with a proton pack so that when they do come out, she can just shoot Buddy as soon as he steps onto the dirt.
Yeah, it was definitely very disappointing to see not this character live up to the full potential that could have had.
Yeah. So, of course, they try to do the plan. So, several things go wrong with the plan. When Finn Wolfhard tries to shoot Gozer. His pack isn't working because we have a whole bunch of the little marshmallow men tearing the wires in his pack to pieces, so it doesn't work. Obviously, the power doesn't work on his pack either. Or not on his pack, on the trap. And Gozer is now able to manipulate the proton wires and is just fucking throwing Lucky around so that she gets kidnapped, or not kidnapped, but possessed by the gatekeeper.
Yeah, she becomes the new host of the gatekeeper since they freed the mother.
Yeah. And just when all hope is lost and the family is clearly about to die, 3 strange men in boiler suits show up who also still have proton packs. And they really give Gozer what for and tell her, hey, we beat you last time around. What are you doing back here? I thought you learned your lesson.
I did love like the amount of jokes to the original that happened in this part too. It's just the part where Gozer even asks Reagan, "Are you a god?" and he almost fucks it up again.
Yeah. And he's like, "Wait, yes, I'm a god. We are gods." So yeah, it's a lot of nice little references like that. Obviously, they only have 3 proton packs, not 4, so they're not capable of properly dominating Gozer.
Yeah, they tried the crossing the streams plan again, which just doesn't work.
Yeah, she uncrosses the streams for them, which is horrifying. And then when all hope is lost again, and it seems like those 3 are about to die to Gozer, she gets hit in the back from a proton beam. And we pan over, and we see Phoebe wielding the proton pack, but we see a mysterious figure standing next to her, helping guide the proton pack. And it's Egon Spangler in ghost form, helping her spiritually.
Yeah, that's definitely the scene where I started tearing up.
Yep, I also got more than a little bit weepy watching this scene in the theater. To be fair, I am also
eating a raw onion.
What?
Was eating a raw onion while watching it?
No, I am just broken inside, so I start tearing up the moment any emotions are brought up involving family. So I was already weepy earlier on when Mother realized Egon actually did love her. That already had me a little bit weepy, and then I just continued being weepy when Ghost Egon was helping Phoebe. So then we have the 3 gentlemen start firing as well, realizing now that they have the 4 Ghostbusters working together to use their proton packs along with Phoebe. Everything's going to be fine, and they have the 4 packs required. So they hold down Gozer. At the same time, Podcast discovers that the ghost trap is also perfectly capable of killing these little marshmallow ghosts. So he murders off a bunch of them, and then fixes up Finn's proton pack so that he can fire it. And Finn makes the fucking Omega Brain, Galaxy Brain, whatever you want to call it, call of the century, because we saw them try and use the trap earlier on, and we saw the power fail, and he starts pointing his proton pack towards Gozer, thinks about it for a second, sees that Gozer seems to be pretty well controlled for now. I mean, gonna break out eventually, but now that's not the more pressing issue, and instead turns and fires his fucking proton pack at the capacitors to help make sure it gets the full charge that it needs in order for the traps to work.
Yeah, that was a very smart way of dealing with it, because you have to remember, these are pretty much nuclear generators they're carrying around.
Yeah. And then once he does that, there is enough power for the traps to fully trap Gozer and the 2 dog beasts. Congratulations, day 1. Oh, not only Gozer and the 2 dog beasts. I forgot to mention that there's just this swirling cyclone of ghosts above the farm this entire time as well.
Yeah, but what Ghostbuster movie doesn't have that?
I know. And it's just they also get trapped inside the 100 traps that are beneath the farm at this point. Luckily, one ghost does not get trapped. That's Egon Spangler.
Surprisingly enough, actually.
Yeah.
I never thought about it, but yeah, he should have been pulled up into that as well.
But luckily he wasn't, and instead he gets to go to heaven or whatever after hugging his daughter one last time. And not saying anything, obviously, because ghosts can't speak. But he has a touching moment where he smiles and looks teary-eyed towards each of his family members and his old friends, and then he fades to stardust and disappears.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very good movie. I felt like it was a touching send off to obviously.
Harold Ramis,
Yep.
yep.
And again, it wasn't Ghostbusters 3. It didn't need to be. It wasn't trying to be, and it just did a really good job.
Yeah. It was a very solid movie. Unlike the other Ghostbusters movie that came out 4 years ago, this one had comedic elements, but wasn't just making a joke of everything that happened. It also took itself seriously when it needed to take itself seriously. And it did very well because of it. This was a very solid movie. As I said, there's the character who I'm less than psyched with how they were portrayed, and that mostly comes down to that one scene in the fucking police station. And aside from that, I think this movie was fantastic.
Yeah, and not to say like the concepts of the Ghostbuster reboot done by Paul Feig was bad. It was more so this the story did not fit very well with what Ghostbusters was. The actors did a fine job and all that. It's just the story itself just kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, that's my complaint about the movie. Is it didn't feel like someone was trying to make a Ghostbusters movie. It felt like they were trying to make a comedy movie that managed to take advantage seems like a harsh word, but it made use of the Ghostbusters IP less so than being a proper Ghostbusters movie.
But yeah, with the movie, we get the end credits scene. There's two of this. Did you happen to catch both of them?
I did not happen to catch either one of them because I had to pee real bad and just like did the coin flip. Maybe this was one of the movies that got released this year that didn't have post-credit scenes, so I ran to the bathroom.
Marvel
Please
ruined
explain to
everything.
me what
Every
I
movie
missed.
has post-credit scenes now. Be ready for that. So the first scene is they do the thing of they show the end credits and then you see a name and it's like, honestly, I gotta stop falling for this because I was going through and then it says, it's doing the names flash up. It's like, Dan Aykroyd playing such and such, blah blah blah, all that stuff. And then it goes Sigourney Weaver playing Dana. I'm like, Dana wasn't in the movie, and then it just cuts to the scene immediately. Like, I fucking fell for it again. I fall for it every goddamn time. And this scene is actually a remake of. Remember in the opening of Ghostbusters when Venkman is got the two students and he keeps zapping the guy but telling the girl that she's using psychic powers?
Yes.
Well, it's Dana got him strapped into the machine and she's giving him the tests. And
Of course.
And he keeps getting them right. And they're talking about I can't believe you used this test on students and all this stuff. And every time he keeps getting it right, she keeps zapping him. And he's like, why do you keep doing this? Like, I know you've cheated in some capacity. You've done something. You have the cards marked, don't you? And he's like, no. And she zaps. He's like, yes, I have it marked.
Nice.
And then the other end credit scene is actually Winston talking to Annie Potts' character. And they're kind of like reminiscing about the old days of Ghostbusters. And this is where Winston explains that he's funded pretty much Ray since the time, and he actually owns the old Ghostbusters building, so it wasn't turned into a Starbucks or anything like that. It's literally just he bought the property and has kind of left it there. And then
Nice.
it shows him walking into this location, looking around. The door opens up. The Ecto-1 drives in, and then it goes down to the basement where the ghost prison network thing is. And it's kind of just a lingering shot on that as the lights flashing, and that's where it ends.
Nice. So could theoretically be setting up could just be nice little ending.
Yeah, I can see them definitely wanting to continue the Ghostbusters franchise. It's just the idea of where the main cast are kids. I don't feel like there's a justification on why they would be professional Ghostbusters.
Yeah. And that could also just not even be trying to set up the future one. It's just their way of saying, like, the end of it is Gozer wasn't left in that trap. Gozer and the Keymaster and Gatekeeper were just brought to that ghost prison thing in the Ghostbusters basement. And
yeah,
like,
I believe it's called the Ghost Matrix.
Ghost Matrix, that makes sense. And it could just be their way of saying, like, yeah, this is the end of Gozer's story. They're forever trapped in here. You don't need to see anything from them ever again. And could also just be explaining why ghosts aren't a big problem in the world anymore.
Until Walter Peck shows up again.
Well, it won't be Walter Peck. They'll try and change it around a little bit, so it'll be probably like Palter Weck or something like that. Yeah, no, I kind of disappointed I missed those. They sound like fun times, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it was just fun little nods to stuff going on. Like the one with Venkman and Dana was just kind of like an homage to like the original opening of Ghostbusters. Well,
Yeah.
outside of the the library scene, which it is anyways.
Yeah.
And then the second one was very much just, you know, it could be setting something up, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Of course.
But yeah, I just really like this movie. It did have its problems. Most movies do. I can nitpick anything if I give it enough time. But original Ghostbusters is probably one of my favorite all-time movies, and to see this like great homage to the original, I really enjoyed it.
I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I felt like it was a perfect homage to the original movies. I feel like it wasn't. They might end up trying to use it as a jumping off point to do more Ghostbusters movies. I mean, we have the Ghost Corpse now, so they're probably going to try and make more Ghostbuster movies. But I think this works perfectly well as a standalone film, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies like I don't really do this in movies, but like I actually had like a stupid grin on my face the whole way through the movie because I was so excited, enjoying everything I was seeing.
Yeah.
Uh, there is one
There's
other.
this-
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you can say your part first. I actually had a question for you.
Oh, fair. So my thing was, as we kind of referenced at the beginning of this podcast, I the first time I went to see this movie in theaters, the power went out halfway through. Not exactly halfway through. It was at the scene where they first encounter Muncher. They chase him out of the building after he manages to escape, and then I got to see Finn working on the car. I saw the car Ecto One engines rev properly once, and it launched, and then immediately the screen cut to black, and the movie was over. And
It's a two-parter.
yeah, it was one of those things where I was obviously disappointed when that happened, a little bit frustrated. In my mind, I didn't want to go back to the theater to pay full price to see a movie I had already seen the first half of. So my full intention was to wait for it to come out on some streaming service, or not even necessarily like Netflix or something like that, but Amazon Prime, and let me just rent the movie there so I could watch it at home.
Nice.
Didn't happen. So I ended up having to go back in theaters to watch it in time for this podcast. And like going into the theater, I was a little bit disappointed that I was going to have to watch the first half of the movie again. I didn't feel that way the moment the movie started. Even watching stuff I had already watched before, I was having a good time, chuckling at the same fucking jokes that I chuckled at the first time through. It was one of those things where, even in the worst possible circumstances for watching the movie, I still had a fantastic fucking time watching that movie. So, I think that speaks volumes about how good this movie is.
Oh, definitely. So the question I want to ask you is, so most of the original cast came back, living and dead, except for one. How do you feel about the fact that Rick Moranis was not in the movie?
I feel a little bad because Lewis was a fantastic fucking character. And, like,
Well, he's also the fifth Ghostbuster.
yeah. So it's a little bit weird. But then again, this movie felt like it was a follow up, like, not a sequel, obviously, but it felt like it was more so meant to follow up the first Ghostbusters movie. Not that it didn't address the second Ghostbusters movie at all, but like it didn't care so much about that one. It was more so a follow up to the first one. The main villain they're fighting is the main villain from the first one. So I feel bad. I would have liked to have seen Lewis Tupple, I think his last name was.
Tully.
Tully, thank you. I would have liked to have seen him, but I am not like broken up or think they did a disservice by not. I think the movie played fine without him being included in that scene where the Ghostbusters come back together to defeat Gozer again, because he wasn't a part of the Ghostbusters who was fighting Gozer the first time around. He was the Keymaster the first time around. So
Yeah, I would have liked to see like an acknowledgement or maybe even like a name drop because canon-wise, he's with Janine, I believe, at the end of 2,
yes,
and yeah, just having that mentioned. But at the same time, they also didn't mention Dana's child at all.
yeah,
Although I guess considering this is 32 years after the first Ghostbusters, their child would have been like a grown adult at this point and probably not even involved.
probably wanted to separate himself from them a little bit and change his name to something stupid like Gary Gruberson or something.
Yeah, I have to say, overall, I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I had a thoroughly pleasant time watching it 1.5 times. Do you have a question for the audience?
So, this question is kind of just going into like the Ghostbuster universe as a whole, but what is your favorite ghost in the Ghostbusters movies? Not all of them have names, but there's so many to pick from. There's Cabby Ghost, there's Slimer, obviously, there's the Titanic ghosts.
So if I didn't think about it at all, Slimer would probably go to answer because he's such a great character. And the fact that they bring him back multiple times throughout the series. Like I'm pretty sure in the animated series, Slimer is on the side of the Ghostbusters, helping them bust other ghosts.
Yeah, he just lives there.
Yeah. So Slimer is a great character, and he's kind of the figurehead of the series. However, the more I think about it, the more I think I have to go with the Stay Puft Man. And not the little mini ones from this movie. I mean the original massive Stay Puft Mark.
The one that breathes fire.
Yeah, because that fucking scene of them all standing together, they're like, don't think about anything. But he just played it being like, I couldn't think of nothing, so I thought about the most peaceful thing I could think of and safest non-harmful thing, and I thought of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So I think it has to be the massive fire-breathing avatar of Gozer, the Stay Puft Marshmallow. Although I don't know if he technically counts as a ghost, because I think he's being that's a manifestation of destruction, so he might not technically be a ghost. So
yeah, it's using the ghost energy, but it's not itself a ghost. But I'll accept it.
If our audience is unwilling to accept it, then I'm going back to my default answer of a slime. But if they're willing to accept it, it's absolutely.
So the one I like, I already mentioned, and it's Cabby Ghost from the first movie.
That's fair. When they get in the cab and ask to drive, and then fucking leans over the shoulder, and it's a fucking ghost in the fucking driver's seat.
Yeah, and it just peels out of the parking space and is driving wildly. It's a short moment, but I always laugh when I see that part. The guy gets like, "Hey, can you take me to such and such?" And the ghost just looks back to him and then just peels out of the driveway.
Yeah.
Slimer from Ghostbusters 2 driving the bus gets a nod, though.
So you just like ghosts that drive automobiles.
I like the ghost that's nonchalantly trying to do its job when all hell is breaking loose.
That's fair.
So let's take a look at our question from our last episode to see if we had any answer for that. So this one was for Arcane, and that was, if you played League of Legends, which character would you like to see show up in the second season? And if you did not, what did you think of the series as a whole, being no experience from League of Legends itself?
Did we get answers?
So we do have one answer. Let me just pull it up real quick. And this one was from Hannah J_13, and that is the Mothman. And for if anyone correctly guessed this episode, let's take a look here and see what we got. And there were no correct guesses for this episode.
That is unfortunate to hear. Better luck next time, fans.
So, do you have any recommendations for people listening for other things to check out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my recommendation for things for people to check out, a little bit of a meme, because you know how I feel about this particular actor. But if you are a fan of Finn Wolfhard, unlike me, I don't know why I say that. He seems like a perfectly normal person, but also fuck him, because this is what I've decided is the hill I die on.
You just hate all Finns.
Yep. So if you are a fan of him in this movie, and also you're just a fan of the movie and all the kind of references and shit like that, I recommend checking out Stranger Things on Netflix. I don't know if they're still making new seasons of that.
Yeah, the new season's going to be coming out soon.
Okay, then check out the new season when it comes out. But yeah, it's more horror than this is. There's less comedy, but it's still a good time and lots of references to life in the 80s and being a child who plays D&D.
Yeah, but,
also, not ghosts, but monsters. It's a good time. Check it out.
Yeah, mid-2022 is when Season 4 is going to launch.
Okay. Jesus. COVID really fucked over that show, I guess, because
Yeah.
the last one was like 2018.
Well, I also believe it was supposed to come out in the this period right now, the holiday season.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
My recommendation, though, is still going to be in the Ghostbusters universe, and I probably recommended this before, but the Ghostbusters video game, which has been credited as being Ghostbusters 3 and pretty much what we're going to get.
I am 90% sure you have recommended it before, but at this point, that's not the end of the world. I have absolutely recommended things multiple times, as I just wasn't sure or not.
Yeah, it's a great game, continues the story very well. It's got some things you have to disregard, considering in this movie, like Nameless Ghostbuster number 5 or 6, I guess, if you want to count Rick Moranis' character as being the 5th.
Yeah.
Also, Ivo Shandor is in that game now, so that's kind of a weird one to explain. Although it is the ghost of Ivo Shandor, which is possessing Walter Peck, and the physical body of Ivo Shandor is in this one.
Yeah. That's a whole thing. So there are some things that don't technically line up with canon, but yes, I remember reading an interview where they said they wanted to make Ghostbusters 3, but they just realized it was unfeasible. And so the story of Ghostbusters 3 was being told via the Ghostbusters video game.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd even said, that's Ghostbusters 3.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, with that wraps up this episode. So if you do want to reach out, comment, or anything along those lines, you can reach us at whatismypodcastabout at gmail.com. We also have the Instagram page and the YouTube where we have updates on a regular basis. But make sure to reach out if you have any questions, make some guesses if you see them, or even send in some suggestions for episodes you'd like to hear.
Yeah, January is coming back up, so if you have something you want us to talk about, now's the time to get your recommendations in.
Yep. And as always, make sure to tune in a fortnight when we'll be reviewing. What does that happen to be next time, Peter?
Make sure you tune in a fortnight where we'll be discussing a case of mistaken identity, where the identity wasn't actually mistaken. We just really want people to.
Seems like some sort of variant.
Yeah.